Good afternoon, friends. Nayaswami Hriman here, broadcasting to you live from the Camino Hermitage on Camino Island, Washington. It's a very gray northwest time. Today it's gray from the sky to the horizon line out over the Port of Susan Bay right here. But inside it's bright and sunny. And so what I'd like to do today, because today's quatrain stanza is number 7, is I'm going to read the quatrain to you first, and then Swami Kriyananda will sing it for us, but then having heard the words first, the singing of it will be more meaningful, I think. So here's quatrain 7 from the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. Come, fill the cup, and in the fire of spring the winter garment of repentance fling. The bird of time has but a little way to fly, and lo, the bird is on the wing.
Stanza 7. Come fill the cup, and in the fire of spring the winter garment of repentance fling. The bird of time has but a little way to fly, and lo, the bird is on the wing.
This is a curious quatrain. This is only number 7 out of 75, so each of the quatrains thus far seem to have a bearing, seem to relate to the beginning of the spiritual search. And so here, now I'll read parts of Yogananda's paraphrase. Come fill the cup of consciousness with the divine wine of bliss. Cast away your material desires and fling into the crackling fire of fresh spiritual enthusiasm your robe of penitence for ever having indulged in them. Waste not these few precious earth years. The bird of life has but a short arc of time to fly. Soon, ah, how sadly soon, it will slip its earthly form and vanish into the infinite. So we have a curious contrast here. It would seem that Omar is saying, don't worry about, don't be involved with, hang on a second here, this thing is making noises it shouldn't, and so I'm going to turn it off. There we go, goodbye. And so it would seem to say that we should put aside the practice of so-called repentance, purification, and so forth. That's not actually what Omar is saying. In fact, our guilt, our recollection and feeling over past actions that were harmful to our self-respect or harmful to others, is like pain in the body, a necessary prod to our wakefulness, to getting our attention. You know, guilt gets a lot of brickbats in culture in the last century or so, latter part of the 20th century and into this century. But guilt, as I say, like pain in the body, is there to alert us that there's something wrong. Now, admittedly, customs of cultures and, rules and taboos and mores, meaning moral rules of cultures, vary widely down through history. And so in our 20th century Freud-inspired culture, there was a lot of brickbats given to guilt induced by so-called Puritanism. Well, there's no point arguing with that particular point of view or reality, if you will. But guilt nonetheless for actions, harmful actions that we have done, does have its point. But Omar's point is the same as that of Swami Sri Yukteswar, who said, "Forget the past. The past lives of all men are dark with shame. What spiritual efforts you make today will determine whether you will reach the goal of life, self-realization." And so this is the spirit in which he is saying, "Fling into the fire of spring the winter garment of repentance." So it has its place. But Swami Kriyananda wrote a humorous song about Satan that I can't remember all the words, but basically it says just how much Satan must appreciate all the attention he gets by people who focus on Satan, on guilt, on evil, to such a great degree. We take on the qualities of that upon which we focus. In fact, in the history of India, in the culture and spiritual history of India, I think of the great, there are many, but I think of the great battle between Lord Rama and the supposedly evil King Ravana, the one who steals Rama's wife Sita from the forest to try to make her his own. And yes, okay, he shouldn't have done that. We agree on that. But still, in the actual tradition and stories of Ravana, he was considered, despite the fact he had 10 heads or something ghastly like that, he was considered a great, well, I hesitate to say saint, but in fact he is revered. He was a great soul, very wise and so forth. He just was captured by, I guess, lust or desire for Sita. But the point is that, we have this dual nature, and we all have done things and so forth in the past. So it's more important what we focus on is what makes us pure. Oh, I know where I was going with the Ravana story. By focusing, there are many stories in which by focusing even hatred on the deity, hatred on the guru, Ravana taking up arms against Rama, when we focus on goodness, we will take on that goodness even if we fight against it. Isn't that curious? I'm not suggesting we do that, but what I am suggesting is that what we focus on is what we become. And that part of the spiritual path, those persons on the spiritual path in religion who focus on evil and criticize people, judge people, and so forth, those who see God as a vindictive God, hellfire and brimstone and so forth, they take on those qualities. Now, I'm not going to condemn those people. That would be giving myself away too easily. But because there is a part of our journey that includes disassociating ourselves, or I should say recognizing the delusionary aspect of our past actions, a delusionary aspect of reality or creation as it appears to us. And so there's a kind of a stage on the spiritual path. I sort of think of it this way. Policemen are possibly reincarnated criminals who seek to overturn their past actions, make good their past actions. Somebody who's suffered a lot of physical pain might, in the next life, vow to become a doctor to help other people overcome their illness and pain. People who provide psychological therapy are probably people, at least some of them, who have experienced mental and emotional pain and illness. And there arises within them the desire to help others. I know on the 12-step recovery path, for example, many people who have made a certain distance in their recovery often become mentors, sponsors, I think is the term they use, to help other people. So there's a part of the spiritual path where the recognition of wrongdoing, recognition of our being in delusion, has its place. But if we don't move on, if we don't come fill the cup of divine satisfaction, the Beatitudes, when Jesus did the Sermon on the Mount, and he wrote, I don't have my text right here to go through all the Beatitudes, but the bliss, the beatitude, the blessing, attendant with each state of consciousness. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the pure of heart. Blessed are the humble or the meek. All of these things, he gives the attendant blessing that comes with the development of that consciousness. And in the yogic path, when we have the yamas and niyamas, the niyamas especially, are those virtues, are those states of consciousness that are those to which we want to aspire, the do's, as we say, those things we want to achieve, to do, as opposed to the don'ts, which are the yamas. And so a natural, healthy progression, psychologically speaking, in the recovery from any delusion, what to mention the primordial one of our separateness in seeking God alone, is to identify, to become aware of what's wrong. But then, if you don't fairly quickly substitute for wrong behavior and attitudes, for the recognition of the wrongs one has done, and so on and so forth, if one doesn't substitute for that, a redirection of energy towards those things that are positive, then you're going to get stuck in the mud. Okay? Just think of a teenager, for example, who's getting into trouble, experimenting with, getting kind of edgy with, where are the boundaries for things like lying and stealing and so on. If a wise parent doesn't find ways to redirect that teenager's energies into positive music in the arts or study or athletics, etc., if the parent doesn't help guide and redirect that teenager into positive forms of activity, then the poor kid's going to get stuck, and the gap between the positive and the negative, including the parent and the child, is going to grow into a great chasm of what will become despair. And so this is what Omar is saying. He's saying, I recognize that for the new spiritual aspirant, for the reawakened spiritual inspiration, that the contrast between my prior behavior and what I aspire to will seem like such a gap that you're going to wallow in that gap, like Arjuna on the battlefield slinking in his chariot, saying, oh, I can't fight, it's just too much. These are all my friends. I've lived with these bad habits all my life. So, that's something we have to go through. So Omar is encouraging the Arjuna in us, discouraged by the burden of our past bad actions and habits, the difficulty of overcoming them. He's saying, okay, enough already. Imagine Omar saying, enough already. And so let's get on with it. Let's fly on the wings of inspiration towards the goal of true happiness. And so that's what this stanza is a reminder of. When you find yourself at 3 a.m, 4 a.m, 5 a.m, awakened and overcome with guilt or sadness or grief or the burden of all the past actions that have done you wrong, as they say, fling aside the bed covers and stand up and go over to your place of meditation and prayer, light the candle, and go upwards towards the light. The bird of time has but a little way to fly, and lo, the bird is on the wing. Be the bird on the wing. Okay, great souls. Tomorrow's another time. In the meantime, fly. Okay, I'm going to take us out of the digital world.